5 p.m. Good evening. My name is Sandra Esenam Apeno and welcome to Business Live. Coming up tonight, a COVID-19 test costing Ghana average of $50 to $65. We have the breakdown by the Ghana Health Service. Implementation of African Continental Free Trade Agreement to come on as planned despite COVID-19 pandemic. Also coming up, Ghana Statistical Service embarks on a survey to assess impact of coronavirus pandemic on local businesses. Details coming up after the break. Welcome back to the program, and we begin with the day's news headline stories. And top on the list tonight, fisher folk said to be struggling. Details coming up next.
Friends of the Nation, a social environmental NGO, says it has identified the lack of political will to enforce fishery laws as a major threat to food security and sufficiency in the country. According to the NGO, Ghana's fisheries sector has good laws and management plans, but weak implementation continues to contribute to the decline of fisheries livelihoods. To this end, Ghana's marine fish stock is overfished to the extent of near collapse, and fish landings are all-time lowest. Outgoing Managing Director of Tallow Ghana and Executive Vice President of Tallow Oil PLC, Kwekwa Watching, says government would have to work hard to make up for the revenue shortfalls created by falling crude oil prices globally. The outbreak of the novel coronavirus has led to limited demand for crude globally, resulting in a dip price from almost $60 to nearly $30 a barrel. In Ghana, the situation has led to fuel price reductions, while government is losing revenue from its annual projections for oil revenue. Government has rejected to receive $1.56 billion from oil revenues, anchored on a price prediction of $62.61 per barrel. The Trade Union Congress, TUC, is urging government to waive the vehicle income tax as a measure to reduce the impact of COVID-19 on commercial transport owners and drivers. According to the TUC, a total or partial waiver for a period would go a long way to lessen impacts of the virus on their lives. In the document entitled Impact of COVID-19 on Enterprise, Employment and Livelihoods in Ghana, some propose mitigating measures. The TUC makes a strong case for the transporters as they continue to make sacrifices in helping the COVID-19 fight.
Let's get into action now, and Director General of the Ghana Health Service says an average of $50 to $60 is being spent on testing samples of COVID-19 as Ghana continues its battle against COVID-19. The cost, however, includes cost of picking samples and taking them to the laboratories. So far, more than 202,000 tests have been conducted.
And the conservative estimate for each test ranges between $50 to $65 per person. If you look at the kits, the extraction, the operational costs, and the human resources costing about that. This excludes the cost of picking a sample and delivering it to the lab. And so it's quite a very expensive undertaking, but it's worth what we're doing. Treatment, I would say, is free for all, and the government picks up all the bills, including the bed fee, the medications that we are giving, and feeding of all the people who are in our treatment centers. I will not be able to put a strict figure to that, but depending on where you are, if you move all the way to the ventilator, obviously the cost of care is quite high. And the Ministry of Health picks up all the bills routinely to look at how these are managed. So we need to do some further costing to see, on the average, how much it costs to treat a person.
In other news tonight, the Ghana Statistical Service is taking steps to assess the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on businesses in the country. Currently, the service says it is embarking on a business tracker survey to establish how enterprises have been hit by the pandemic. Government statistician Professor Kwabena Enim have been given details on the exercise on Business Live.
Ghana Statistical Service, in collaboration with the United Nations Development Program and the World Bank, is rolling out a business tracker to help the country get a better appreciation of the impact of COVID-19 on businesses in Ghana. The President recently launched the 600 million stimulus for businesses in the country, and it is important for us to follow up on the businesses that will be receiving some resources from this fund and also those that will not be receiving, to help us appreciate how the intervention would help the country recover based on activities of businesses in the country. As at 5 years ago, the number of businesses that were running in terms of operations were in excess of 630,000, and the number of people who were engaged in these businesses were in excess of 3 million. This is a significant percentage of our total population that we have, indicating about 10% of persons who are engaged in either large, medium, small, or micro enterprises. It is important that we ensure that these businesses stay in business so that there will be the injection that a country would need as far as output is concerned. Through this medium, we are encouraging all Ghanaians, all businesses, to support Ghana Statistical Service in tracking the effect or impact of COVID-19 on businesses in the country. We request for full cooperation, and we assure businesses that information that will be put out there will be confidential, as the Statistical Service Act 2019, Act 1003 indicates. Information collected will not be shared with anybody, and the information that will be put out there will be at the aggregate level, and then there wouldn't be any identifiers to help track businesses that are providing us with this information. So in the next 3 weeks, we're going to approach more than 5,000 businesses that we've sampled to help us understand the impact of COVID-19 on businesses in the country, and we request for maximum cooperation. We take this opportunity to also indicate that we appreciate the information that you are giving to us, and you are helping the country gather the needed data that is required for development. In this regard, we're not going to ask any firm to pay for the data that is given to us, and any official of GSS who indicates such, kindly let us know at headquarters. Also, for the first time, and in view of the impact of COVID-19, we're going to do a computer-assisted telephone interview, which indicates that we're going to collect the data based on telephone calls. This is in contrast with our traditional approach where we do face-to-face telephone collection. And once the interviewers call, they walk you through processes by which they're going to identify themselves, so that we're going to get your confidence that you are dealing with a staff of Ghana Statistical Service. Thank you.
And let me remind you that that exercise is set to begin on Thursday. Moving on, Foreign Affairs Minister Shirley Aboagye-Wiafe says African countries are working to ensure effective implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement despite the pandemic. Delivering a statement on the floor of Parliament to mark AU Day, the minister says despite the setbacks due to the coronavirus pandemic, member states are working around the clock to meet the July 1 takeoff date. And I have been joined on the phone lines by parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opoku-Gakpo. Joseph, good evening and thanks so much for joining me. All right, so we'll try and work the phone lines. Looks like we don't have Joseph Opoku-Gakpo on the phone lines, but we have a story from Parliament where we are being told that the Foreign Affairs Minister is saying that the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will come on as planned. It's expected to take off in July 1, and then member states are currently meeting to work out the modalities to be able to take off smoothly when the date comes on. But we'll try and get Joseph Opoku-Gakpo back on the phone lines and then get some clarity on how this is going to work. Moving on to other stories now, Chief Executive of the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, Ifo Asabia-Asare, says the recovery plan for Ghana's export markets is underway as countries around the world reopen their economies. She has been explaining to Joy Business how Ghana's export market has been hit from COVID-19.
One, we actually need money from import to support the export industry. There was no import coming in, so then it means I'm losing the funds that I need to promote exports. Basically, this is how it affected me. I cannot do all the interventions I want to do for the export industry. All the programs that I planned for 2020 wasn't going to be. We couldn't get in touch with our exporters. We couldn't take them out onto the international market. So it has affected, aside being a health issue, it had become a socio-economic issue that had affected the kind of industry that we are in.
So when you say industry, so which sector specifically, and how are the people in that space coping with these tough times?
Every aspect of industry in Ghana, so I cannot even name some and leave some out. It has affected every industry that is in the country, and every sector that is part of the export ecosystem has been affected as well.
So what's the recovery the plan to get back?
Gradually, we are getting back into our groove. We are still working. We are in touch with them because of technology. We are using every means we can to stay in touch, and we are encouraging them to even plan for the after COVID, because life is going to be before COVID and after COVID. After COVID, what are we going to do? And the plans are ahead. We are talking about how we are going to move the industry to the next level. A lot of things have changed. Now we have realized that we can even manufacture certain things that we thought we couldn't manufacture in this country. So it has actually opened our eyes. We've had some positives out of it, where people are manufacturing and doing things that otherwise we would have imported. So that's the good side of it. Yeah.
So what would this mean for your work? Do you think it's going to sort of expand our export or sort of things that we produce here locally because of the experience?
Looking into Africa, we want to work within Africa. The intra-African trade is now here to stay. We are looking at it and saying that this can be done. 1.5 billion, 1.3 billion people in Africa. Why not trade amongst ourselves? And I can see that vigorously the debate is on about trading within Africa, and suddenly we realize that there are so many things we can do. Why don't we do them and, let them stay in the continent and let the money stay on the continent?
Welcome back to Business Live, and we go back to our earlier story where Foreign Affairs Minister Shirley Ayoko-Botchwey says African countries are working to ensure effective implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement despite the pandemic. Delivering a statement to the floor of Parliament to mark AU Day, the minister says despite the setback due to the coronavirus pandemic, member states are working around the clock to meet the July 1 takeoff date. And I have been joined on the phone via Zoom by parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opoku-Gakpo for more updates on that. Thank you very much, Opoku-Gakpo, for joining me. And to what extent did the Foreign Affairs Minister say that COVID-19 will affect the implementation of the Free Trade Agreement?
She made a number of references to it, even as she addressed MPs earlier in the day, making the point that by the earlier timetable that they had drawn as far as the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Agreement is concerned, they wanted to see a situation where by the 1st of July 2020, it would have been in force, and that the establishment of the Secretariat would also come into force by March 2020. But she went on to say as a result of COVID-19, the processes have slowed down a bit, and it's to a certain extent hampering the entire processes. But in concluding her statement to Parliament, she said, and let me quote what she said directly, she said, I wish to state that COVID-19 is another major test of the resolve of the AU and its member states to advance the development of the continent. And she said, while dealing with the pandemic and saving lives, Africa cannot defer urgent action on the various plans and programs that will advance continental trade and development. And then she concluded that point by saying that we must move ahead with the most ambitious steps towards Pan-African integration with the creation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, ensuring it's operationalized as soon as possible. So in summary, she makes the point that despite the challenges with its implementation and all, because of COVID-19 and restrictions and difficulties in traveling across the continent and all, they are still committed to getting it up by the 1st of July as they had agreed sometime last year.
I want to understand how movement is going to be like if you want to go on with the implementation, especially when you've mentioned that borders have been closed and all that. So how do they hope to do that?
So the general conversation is about possibly easing the restrictions and all as soon as possible. It was supposed to come into force by the 1st of July, but when it comes to things like setting up the Secretariat, getting all the agreements reached, signing out all the documents, harmonizing the various legislations in various countries. These are things that need to be done before the 1st of July. So just maybe the anticipation is that by the 1st of July, the necessary restrictions and movements and all would have been lifted. But the paperwork, which to a certain extent was being hampered because of COVID-19, are things that she indicates they would want to move ahead with, so that by the 1st of July, everyone will be ready for the full implementation of the agreement.
Right, Gakpo, I'm sure it's a fact now that the COVID-19 is wreaking a lot of havoc on economies across the globe. And so she also spoke about some debt relief for African governments. What exactly was she saying about that?
You know, that's a cause that the finance minister and other finance ministers across the sub-region, including South Africa, have been pursuing for quite a while now. And so in her statement, she makes the point, and again, let me quote what Shelia Yokoboche said specifically. She said, Ghana supports the call for debt relief for African countries and a moratorium on the servicing of international loans, including private loans, as part of the measures to help the various African countries shore up their economies and to stay quite less vulnerable in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. So she says that is something that Ghana supports very vigorously in terms of a moratorium on the payment of loans and also the freezing of various interest on loans. And according to her, when that is done, it will give various governments some space to help create even more jobs, even as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to.
I'm sure a lot of members on the floor have been reacting to this news. And what's the body language, and have they been able to quantify the impact of COVID-19 on businesses in their various constituencies, if I might say?
MPs who contributed to the conversation expressed concern that COVID-19 is negatively impacting their various activities. There were contributions to the statement from the Nsawam Adwajiri MP, Frank Anodompré, as well as the Member of Parliament for North Tongue, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, who is the ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee. They make the point that it's time that various state institutions at the regional level, at the African Union level, set up when it comes to harmonizing business activities, stepping up research, providing relief for various citizens, so that then by the time the COVID-19 pandemic is over, Africa will still be intact, and that our economy wouldn't have been dealt such a negative, irrecoverable blow going forward. So those are some of the suggestions from MPs on what should be done differently, so that then Ghanaians are not hit very negatively, and even Africa generally is not hit that badly as far as the Continental Free Trade Agreement.
I want to say a big thank you, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, for that update from Parliament. Let's now turn the spotlight on a female doing exploits in the automobile industry in Kumasi. Her commitment is one that should motivate a lot of women who generally assume certain professions that are perceived for their male counterparts.
My name is Esther Eshon. I completed KTI. I studied autobody, and after my education, I came to Kumasi Magazine for my internship. As a woman, you need to have handiwork. If a man comes into your life to marry you, the first thing he would ask is, what do you do for a living? So you need to learn something that will help you in future. I really love this work. That's why I went in for.
Esther
earns on average 300 Ghana cedis a day.
With the job, it depends. Sometimes there will be good days. Other times too, the story is different. I earn up to 300 or 400 cedis a day, but an office worker can't make up to 300 cedis a day. Our daily earnings is, however, not predictable. You can make from 200 to 400 a day or even nothing.
She required no miracle to realize not everyone can work in an office. Some must discover their way in life.
All of us can't go and work in the office, so that's why I have my professional handiwork, so that in future, when my husband could not provide, I will also be able to take care of my kids. It's better to learn something for yourself than to go and wander about in.
And that will be all for the program tonight. You can log on to myjoyonline.com/business for more business news updates. But I'm back at prime time on Joy News Prime at 7 with a business news update. My name is Sandra Esinam Apen. Thanks so much for watching.